Hi, my name is Siege. We're here in my studio in Belgium, and today we're going to be looking at how I created my latest single, That's Jack, which is out now on Toolroom Trax. So here's the project. This is the first version of the project. I've done it a couple of times, like every time I like to clean up and then get a fresh project. But this is the project where it all started. Let's start with the kick. We got 3 kicks layered. A top kick, which is sampled from a Pecco Suna record. This is the main kick, sample pack from Mark Knight. And a mid kick, which is just adding some dirt. Now the main thing with this one is I like to tune my kick drums. So my bass line's in F sharp, so I tuned my kick to F sharp as well. The original sample was like this. And then I just tune it to my bass line. Like this. I've done the same for this one. This one was originally like this. So then I went like -1 and up this. And I just find that when you layer kicks and you tune them all to the same key, you get a cleaner result. So that's it for the kick. Also, a lot of times I just sample a kick from a record, and I'll show you 3 different ways how you can do that as well. So let's say I want to sample the kick from this record. This hit is pretty clean, so let's use that as a starting point. First thing, I'm going to take off the warp, and then I'm gonna isolate it as good as possible. So there's no low end there, maybe a little bit there. So I'm gonna fade it out so I don't have any clicks. And then the first way I can do it is just using EQ8, and then just with a low pass filter, automate it. So I want the first part, we want to have that clean, like the click as they say. And then the last part, we're going to filter out everything that we don't need, like that hi-hat and the percussion. And then you can play with the curve until you got like a nice result. And if you're happy with the result, you can just resample this kick like this, and then we got our clean hit here. This is the way I used to do it. There's another way which is essentially the same, but then automating this process. I'm just gonna load it into a new MIDI track like this. Then we're gonna filter out everything we don't need. Something like that. And then we're gonna bring in the click back with the envelope. So I'm gonna activate the envelope, amount to 72, which is the max. And then we bring out the click of the kick. And then you can adjust the decay to make it longer. And let's try something like that. And now I can use that kick. Another way, just see a lot of people using, and it works quite good, is using the multiband dynamics tool in Ableton. So you want to duplicate this. So we have it 3 times. In the first channel, we're gonna solo just the highs. And we shorten it. Something like this, maybe. Here we're gonna use solo just the mids. Again, get it as clean as possible. And then this, we solo the lows. And then we can group these. And all together it sounds like this. And this we can also, again, resample if we want to use this like this. And now we have pretty clean kick. So those are 3 different ways how you can sample a kick drum if you don't want to use a sample from a sample pack. Next up is the bass line. Fairly simple, together with the kick. So this one is an audio, so that's why we went to this project, because I have the MIDI bass line over here. This is what we started from. I can rebuild this quickly so you know how to make it. Take the MIDI file. I use Serum for this one. And there we go. First thing when it comes to bass, I want a nice and clean sub, which we're gonna get from a sine wave. Lower it. 2 octaves sounds fine. A little bit of release. Then when we're using a sine, it only gives us like the really low frequencies. Right, and we also want to have some more mid frequencies. So I'm going to layer it with a saw. You can use this basic one, but in this case I use the analog basic mini, which sounds like this. Also going to lower it 2 octaves. When it comes to bass lines, I prefer for this kind of bass to have the phase randomization down to 0, so it's like exactly the same every time. I don't like the way this sounds. I want some of the mid frequencies, but not that much, so I'm gonna filter some out again. I use a 24 low filter, resonance to 0. I found if you use resonance, it takes away a little bit of the low end. I don't like that. Something like this. And then to get that attack, I'm gonna use an envelope, automate the cutoff with it. Close enough, and then we need some bending to happen to give it that like bending bassline feel. Something like this. Once I got something that I'm happy with, I'm gonna freeze it. That way I can use it in a new audio track. And then I'm just gonna, it's just a simple loop. So I can cut it there, just use this and give it some more volume so I can see it a little bit better. I used to use compression to squeeze the bass line. It depends, like some bass lines you want to have some movement, you want to have some volume. changes to give it groove, but in this case and with this kind of records, I want it like as flat as possible. I used to do that with compression, but it's way easier if you just do it like this. I cut every note, then I bounce them into place. And now I can level them all to 0. And then I just duplicate this, so my bass line is exactly the same in volume and in waveforms all the way through. That's how I created it. And then I added an EQ to filter out, again, a lot of the mid frequencies, but this is going to sound much fuller than just a bass line with a single sine wave. So that's why I did add in the saw waveform. So that's kick, bass. I got some toms, but I didn't end up using those. I got 2 bass stabs. Just to give some extra variation. First one is a sample, and the second one is freezed. It's probably just the same preset that I use for the bass, but then an octave higher. And together, I don't know, it just adds a little bit of an extra thing. Which I figured sounded quite nice. Then we got some hi-hats. Fairly simple. Some jazz hats from the standard Ableton kit. I'm not using this one. Standard 909. Something that has a little bit more of a shaker feel to it. And then more layering, just to get something nice going on. Then we got an open hat. Just some samples. And with the open hats, it's what gives it drive, really. Fast hats. Again, just a bunch of loops, shakers, fast hats, more fast hats, shakes, more shakes, and all together. Some rides. So as you see, it's a lot of hi-hats. I tend to layer a lot just to give it like very thick sound. So with stuff like this, there's not much going on, so you need to fill the frequency range out with your drums. So I tend to layer a lot just to give it a full sound. Claps, sample clap, the big snare. Sample is from I don't know what record. More claps, this one's not playing. Another sample. Another sample. Same with the hats as with the claps as with the hi-hats. Just layer them on top so you get full sounding percussion buzz. Just simple percussive element. Again, just a sample. It's tuned this to the key of the record. So it's all nice in key, and then I got some top loops. Quite a lot actually. This one's not playing. So all the drums together sound like this. As you can hear, the loops just fill it out a little bit more. Then we got the lead. Which I'm afraid, again, is just another sample. Layered with another sample. Got an auto filter on there, Echo Boy. This thing is something I built that consists out of echo, which is modulated with some LFOs. And all it does is it gives it a little bit of movement. So without it, just straight. And with this, you got like some little cool effects. Another Echo Boy, let's see. This is automated in the breaks, I think, to make it bigger, as with this one. So the idea for this record, it actually started from like this lead. So the idea is to have like the lead, it goes on throughout the whole record. As you can see, usually you would make a loop like this. So it's, what's that, 4 bars? But in this case, it's not the full 4 bars. So it means that it's just relentlessly going on exactly the same, and it never lands on the same place. And although it's very simple, it's just one note, it keeps it interesting because it changes throughout the record. Let's have a look quickly at the automation. So here in the breakdowns, you can see there's some automation going on. Basically to make it bigger and bigger. Then we got some classic vocals, the witch scream. We all know that. Some more screams. Snare roll. Basic 909 snare roll. Sine effects. Just before it drops. Then I got a little bit of effects going on here. Which is just like your standard white noise and stuff. And basically that's all there was to this record when I sent it to the label. Let's see.
Let's go.
And there was an old vocal ID. So basically I sent this as an instrumental to Danny, who's A&Ring at Toolroom. He loved it and then came back that it needed a vocal. So that's what I've done next. Let's dive into the following project to see what I did later. Okay, so here we are in the final project, or I think this is the final one. There's a couple more elements, some atmospheric stuff. This, 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 and we're not using that one. Basically, this just gives you a little bit of noise to fill out any gaps that are still there. And I just think it sounds better. It's very subtle. But I like it. Kick, we went through that one. Bass steps, hats, loops, lead, snare roll, sign-on effects. Have we got more effects? Yeah, probably a bit more. Synthesize. Which is basically just a bunch of detuned saw waves, and then with the pitch bend going up, probably in here, yeah. Pretty simple, straightforward, but it adds an extra element. And of course the lovely air horns here. I think I have this air horn sitting on my hard drive for over 10 years. And it's actually the first time I actually used it in a record, but I wanted to do it for a long time, so finally made it. So then we only have the vocal two left to talk about.
Feel it, that's Jack. You move, that's Jack. No lights, no plan, just sweat and Jack. You feel it, that's Jack. You move, that's Jack. No lights.
So basically I sent the instrumental to the guys, they liked it, they said it needed a vocal, so I went in and figured out what we're going to use. I didn't want to sample anything because sampling can be a pain in the ass to clear. Didn't want to use splice vocals because although there's a lot of good stuff on there, it's so overused and it's so defining in a record. So I prefer to steer away from those, although it's super easy and they sound good and all that. So I went in with my buddy ChatGPT and we started brainstorming some. I wanted like a classic male house vocal with Jack and all that. Wrote some lyrics. You do need to like steer them very well because otherwise you get loads of crap vocals. Got this in the end, quite liked it, and then I got someone to record it for me. Pretty crappy quality, to be honest.
You feel it, that's Jack. You move, that's Jack.
So there's a lot of effects. EQ to cut out the lows. OTT, just squashing the vocals. Soothe to get rid of some nasty frequencies. De-esser to get rid of the S's, and another de-ess to get rid of the S's. Another de-esser, so 3 de-essers to get rid of all the sharp S sounds. CLA, which I love on vocals, just to give a little bit of the top here. The top is some air, small reverb, small delay, slap delay. Track spacer, probably side chaining to the kick.
That's Jack. You move, that's Jack. No lights, no plan.
Yeah. Just the kick needs to cut through at all times. Echo Boys, a little bit of delay. This is something that's probably automated throughout the breakdown.
Feel it, that's Jack.
Yeah, to make it bigger. And then another EQing out the lows. So nothing special, but needed that processing. So yeah, fairly simple. Originally, I only used it in the breakdown, so here and there. And again, Danny from Toolroom said, like, bring it back in, so we introduce it again over here.
Feel it, that's Jack. You move, that's Jack. No lights, no plan, just sweat.
And just because we're using the same vocal over and over again, I wanted to do just something a little bit different here in the breakdown instead of having it just all the way through. And the way I've done that, so there's different ways you can do this, but the way I like to do it, which I think is pretty easy, is I go into my original vocal because that's lined up and synced, warped the way I want it to. So I want to repeat that jack, 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 jack bit. So that's basically, this is what I want to do, right? And I make it shorter and shorter. So I take one of those and then I bounce it into place, drop that into a new MIDI channel. Get rid of that. And because we bounce it into place, it's in time, it's synced. So now if I loop this up, that's exactly 1/4. So if I put it in here now, it should be in sync. And then all you do is you take the length, I think. Yeah, you take the length one and you automate that downwards. That's, I think, the easiest way to get that effect. There's other ways, but this way is super easy. And then we got one more thing we can discuss. This is reverse vocal. Also pretty straightforward, been shown a lot of times, but let's just do it one more time. You take the beginning of the vocal that you want to introduce, bounce it into place, reverse it, then you put a ton of reverb on there. I have reverb on my buses, so I just use that. Another audio, set it to resampling, and we're gonna record this in. This gives us a nice long reverb tail. Again, bounce that into place, reverse it again, and there we have our reverse reverb. So So I think that's pretty much all there is to it. And all together it sounds like this. There we have it. That's how I created That's Jacked, which is out now on Toolroom Trax. I hope you enjoyed it and learned a thing or two. If you want to see more of this content, please like, subscribe, comment, all the good stuff. And you can help me a lot with the algorithms and stuff. Hope to see you next time. Bye-bye.